Mr. Fortenberry, the Vice Chair of the Subcommittee on Africa, Global Health, and Human Rights, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this important hearing. Although this might be a bit discomforting, I must divert and address something that happened earlier in this hearing. I don't care to be lectured to about the need to be bipartisan, particularly in such an intolerant and uncivil tone. Now, this is an important hearing. There are serious questions here, and to suggest that our motives are a ruse for political motivation, to me, is disrespectful and discourteous, and I think unworthy of the levity of this important matter. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming and your willingness to address in a professional manner hard questions that are before you today. I also do look forward to hearing from Secretary Clinton when she's available, and wish her the best of recoveries. After meeting with Ambassador Pickering and Admiral Mullen recently, I'm confident that they did a thorough job with the Accountability Review Board. Theirs was a sobering and daunting task, and I think they gave us a good, strong framework for future guidance. However, there are still some unanswered questions. You've touched on them at length today, but I've got to go back to a few. Many people see the Administration's public commentary in the aftermath of Benghazi as misleading. The video narrative was given as the primary explanation of the deadly assault, and this was wrong. You suggested so. I can see how there might have been an initial discussion of the potential linkage of the video, given the incidents, particularly in Cairo, to the suggestion that that was a motive for the attack. But I also think the video narrative reflects a certain tendency at State, perhaps, to inordinately place hope in goodwill in civil society, de-emphasizing the harsh realities that there are enemies out there who could potentially conduct a coordinated attack on our facilities. Our officials quickly knew that we were dealing with a premeditated terrorist attack, but the video narrative persisted. Can you explain why?
Well, Congressman, I'd say a couple of things. First, I've learned in more than 30 years in the Foreign Service to understand harsh realities very clearly. It's a very complicated world, especially in the Middle East, and it can be a very risky landscape. And I can assure you that our diplomatic missions understand that very well, and we certainly do in Washington as well. As I tried to explain before, the officials, the administration officials who addressed this issue, and the intelligence community professionals on whom they depended acted in good faith. This was a terrorist attack, and we tried to address that plainly at the start. What was unclear were the exact composition of the attackers, their motives, how this came about, whether it was more a target of opportunity or something that had been planned well in advance. And those issues are still the subject of investigation. But there was no protest, there was no demonstration that took place before the attack. I'm sure my colleagues in the intelligence community wish that they could have come to that conclusion more quickly. It did take a period of several days to debrief the survivors of the attack in Benghazi, and then as soon as my colleagues in the intelligence community were able to conclude there was no protest, there was no demonstration, they were up here to brief you and your colleagues on that. As I said, Congressman, the truth is people operated in good faith. I've been through a number of these kind of crises in the past. The first stages of them are often confusing, and you're sifting through lots of conflicting information. I honestly do not believe that there was ever an attempt to misrepresent or mislead anyone.
I guess the question becomes then, what was communicated to the White House and the State Department during the Benghazi attack?
Well, during the attack, sir, there was, very intensive communication between our embassy in Tripoli, our people on the ground in Benghazi. The ARB looked very carefully at this issue, and their conclusion, and I respect it, is that there was a very professional and systematic communication and decision-making between Washington and the field during this period. And the President was actively engaged. Certainly Secretary Clinton was very actively engaged throughout that awful night.
There's a letter from several United States senators to the President in early October, nearly a month after the attack, asking for more fullness of explanation. So you have, again, a video narrative still churning out there as one possible explanation. Some conflicting viewpoints publicly stated. I accept that. You're correct. But there was no answer to that letter asking for a full unpacking of what information was to be had, given what we clearly know now. And they asked for information again at the end of October. So I think you can understand why. There are questions as to why this has persisted for so long, and suggestions that why is there an intention to potentially mislead here?
All I can say, Congressman, again, is I honestly do not believe there was ever any intention to mislead or misrepresent. There were some inaccuracies in the original statements.
Can you explain the delay in response?
I'm sorry, response?
Well, I'm looking at a letter from Senator Graham and McCain and Ayotte and Johnson.
No, I mean, we owe you straight answers to correspondence.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for your professionalism, your dedication. I appreciate your willingness to come today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fortenberry. Gentlemen, thank you again for your testimony. Please convey to the Secretary our wish for her a speedy and full recovery. We look forward to her testimony here before mid-January. And ladies and gentlemen, it's been a thrill to have been the chairman of this committee for a minute, and it's been a delight to have been with to serve with my ranking member, Mr. Berman. A true thrill. Thank you. And with that, the committee is adjourned.